All right, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hi, Dick Swanson. I'm the chair of the Water and Sewer Commission, and this is the September 2nd, 2020 meeting of the Water and Sewer Commission. I'll call it to order. And the first order of business is our minutes from July 8th, 2020. We did not meet in August. So has everybody had a chance to take a look at those?
Yes.
I read through them. They look good.
Yeah, they look good to me.
Okay, motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right,
Second
Mark.
that.
All right, John, and we're all in favor?
Oh, hey.
Okay. No business, rainfall wastewater treatment plant, and I sent out that, I guess, around lunchtime. I hope you got it. The reason it's late is I didn't get the wastewater treatment plant information until about 11:30 this morning. So if you take a look at that, what you'll see is, once again, you know, our wastewater treatment plant actually is running about the same as our point of entry numbers, where it goes, the amount of water that goes into the system. So we're doing pretty good over there on the wastewater treatment side. And I don't really have any comments. The only thing I don't understand is the month before July, and of course we didn't have a meeting in August, so we couldn't talk about it, is you'll notice that the wastewater treatment is significantly lower by about almost 100,000 gallons, less than what came out of the well. I don't really have an explanation for that. I do know that the standard rule of thumb is that at point of entry number, usually only about 90% of that in an ideal environment goes to the wastewater treatment plant, because people wash their cars, mow their lawns, and use water outside. But I don't know, it's an anomaly, or it just happens to be that was a month where everybody washed their cars. So anyway, any comment on our wastewater treatment plant flow and the rainfall and impacts on our water use?
It looks like it's been dropping nicely, and I see they're working on the sealing the manholes around town. That's a good thing. So
Yes, it is. All part of the that I&I work that we're doing. Anything else? Questions?
No.
Okay. I could, Harrison Lashir and our other projects, and where do they stand? And, the IDA project, stormwater management, which is Harrison Lashir, and the plans are complete as to the work they want to do. And what they did previously as a temporary measure was simply to do some work for some drainage temporarily until they get around to the main project. The main project will be some stormwater management effort that actually spills over into the west side of Route 27 in the Mount Airy, because the water drains from that side of 27 over to the Harrison Lashir property. The status now is the plans are complete, the project's shovel ready, but the IDA is not going to go ahead with any authorizing any work over there until the issue of annexation is resolved. So they're in a holding pattern on the actual larger project that was always planned to do for stormwater management on the Harrison Lashir. So that's in holding. East-West Pond, the project was bid, and a low bid was received from Kibler Construction for $1,070,000. And information has been forwarded to MDE for approval, and then they could award that contract. This There's approximately a 4-month process to obtain all the approvals, so work is probably going to kick off, I would say, early 2020. And this is the project where there will be approximately 50% grant. So the town's obligation to that project is roughly, $500,000 and change. And the other project, which is called Twin Ridge, which is the dam, is the project's been awarded to Hamilton Construction, and construction has begun with the installation of sediment control devices, and the RFP for the wetland area will be released soon, and that project's in process. And I hear that dinging, but I keep getting severe weather alerts. Any questions, comments?
Not on that, no.
All right. Moving along, get to the good stuff here is the public education. These are placeholders, is on hold during the coronavirus, and then we'll get around to start doing some work. I'm making some public service announcement videos for the town website. Emergency response team, we've given some input and we're waiting on them to come back with their suggestions of how to write up water for disaster relief and how that whole process would work. The draft resolution for the town council, so to have them maintain a water and sewer reserve of was 3.3 million suggested, but has been reduced to 1.3 million. We discussed that back in July and said that was fine. Has been approved by the town council at their August 3rd meeting. So that's good to go. And now we get down to the water use limitation tiers. And I don't know, John, you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. All right. I actually pulled some slides together. I thought I'd just talk from those. I'm going to share my screen. I'll run through these. I'm going to try to run through them fairly quickly. Let's see. Where's the presentation? Here it is. Okay. So, of course, it's on the wrong screen. Bear with me. All right. Okay, can you guys see my PowerPoint here?
Yes.
Yes.
It's not in presentation view. So I just got a handful of slides here I'm going to run through, and then I'll share the kind of the draft document that I pulled together. And my plan for that is I'd like to tweak it a little bit more. It's not complete. Dick, I'd like to check with you on a few things, talk to the contact you mentioned here in town to discuss the wells, and then finalize this, finalize the draft and then circulate it to the commission here for everybody's review before the next meeting. So that's kind of my general plan. So my thought here was just to take a couple minutes. I'm just going to kind of recap sort of what we're trying to do. I feel like I've gone through this a few times maybe on our prior, during our prior meetings, but I think it's worth revisiting just to make it clear what we're doing, what we're trying to achieve here. So this slide here on the left is showing the town code, which actually authorizes the mayor to impose moratoriums on the use of water, and they define a few conditions here. It talks about mayor shall give due consideration to the recommendations such as projected uses of water, storage capacity, groundwater conditions, conditions of drought, and other conditions that may affect the adequacy of the supply. Not a lot of detail there. I think it gives a sort of a general guide to follow for making decisions. I think as we've talked about before, these are decisions that shouldn't be made lightly, right? They need some thought. So back in 2007, the town pulled together this memorandum which defined the water use limitation tiers. We've talked about this during prior meetings. The concern that some of us had with this was it was fairly complex, at least in the tiered system. It's set up here, not really intended to read, but there's 7 tiers, and we've talked about this before. They are kind of an escalating set of conditions that would be implemented during drought conditions. They aren't really defined as to what would trigger one tier versus the next. I guess it would be up to the town or to the mayor to make those decisions. So, so yeah, this is what we're reviewing, trying to see if we can improve it, if there are areas for improvement. This is kind of a quick summary. I actually just went through this really. The three things I feel like that we're looking into. One is essentially what triggers us to take actions. Two is what the actions would be. What would be the restrictions that we implement, or that the town would be able to implement. And then this third thing that we've talked a little bit about was the fact that this over here, this third paragraph, I think it is, it says for building permits applied for while mandatory water use limitations are in effect, no use and occupancy permits would be issued for new construction or development until mandatory limitations are lifted. So Dick, I know we talked about that last time. I believe we were going to recommend that that be reconsidered, maybe even pulled out of this moving forward. Isn't that correct? Did we
Yes.
touch on that last time? Okay.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. All right. So, so this blue box here essentially captures the three things that I was trying to do when I was digging into this. One, as I've said, is establishing clearer metrics to help us guide the overall decision-making process, really to help the town have a clearer path and process for deciding when restrictions might be warranted. Then simplifying the tier, right? Why do we need 7 different stages? What I'm looking at is more like 3 stages. That would be more consistent with what the state of Maryland recommends and what some of our neighboring communities here, like Westminster, are using. And then the third one there, yeah, we've talked about removing that restriction on the occupancy permits. So digging into this, there's a bunch of tools out there that we can use to help this process out. The U.S. Drought Monitoring Program has some great resources. MDE has some really good resources as well. They have a statewide regional drought monitoring program. Then, so we're moving from national to state to county. Carroll County Department of Land and Resource Management has a pretty impressive system in place. They have a network of observation wells. They've got 50 wells across the county that they actually monitor on a biweekly basis. I was in touch with Zachary Neal of Department of Land and Resource Management this past couple weeks, talking through a few things with him, and he's been very helpful. And it's clear that that office would be a great resource to the town moving forward. And I know they provide input through the to the town already and through the Water Resource Conservation Council. And then, of course, local data would be another tool, information that we can gain from what we're doing with our pumping wells. That's the area that we really need to dig into a little bit more and understand what our options are. So I'm just going to run through these just to kind of share some of the information that's out there. Again, I think it's pretty helpful. No reason for us to recreate the wheel. There's a lot of info out there already that's widely available and published online that provides a great reference to the commission, to the town, to the mayor, moving forward to track when decisions for restrictions might be needed. So this is the U.S. Drought Monitor. Again, it's online. It's actually updated on a weekly basis. It's a national map that you can zoom into to various regions. So here, this is Maryland, of course, down here. It's all white except for, it looks like the far western portions of the state. White is showing, this is essentially the intensity of potential drought conditions from none, which is white. That's what Maryland is currently showing up as, all the way through exceptional drought. You know, these extreme and exceptional drought conditions, it does look like there are areas in the country that fall into that category. So weekly updates, still fairly high level, but you know, it's an interesting tool to be aware of, I think. The state has its own system as well, which I think does provide some benefit to us, or would provide some benefit to the town. I've grabbed a few screen captures here just to share with you guys. So the state updates this on a monthly basis. Their website, they post this map here that's color-coded from normal to emergency based on 4 indicators. And the 4 indicators are consistent. Other towns use the same 4 indicators. I'm recommending we would consider these as well and reference these in our plan. Rainfall, stream flow, groundwater levels, and reservoir state storage. These are, you know, I think at least 3 of them, maybe 2 of them for sure, are relevant to Mount Airy. We don't have any reservoirs. But what the state does is they track these indicators across the state and within different regions. So Mount Airy falls within the central region. So you can see the current plot here, which is from July 31st. Like I said, it's updated every month. Statewide, everything is listed as normal. So they're tracking, again, rainfall, stream flow, groundwater levels in their monitoring network, and then reservoirs, rating each of those individually and then providing an overall status. Again, I think a useful tool. It's something that can be monitored just to see how conditions are looking, not specific to Mount Airy necessarily, but definitely specific to the region in which we're sitting. I grabbed this example from 2017 to show how it changes. So it looks like back in March, central region, our overall status was warning level. Looks like stream flows and groundwater levels were in the emergency range, which, you know, that's literally red flags in this case. Something that, you know, that would be worth tracking and keeping an eye on. All right, so zooming in a little bit closer to Carroll County and the observation well network that these guys are monitoring. So this map here is right off their website. It shows the 50 wells that they're monitoring. And they're collecting water level measurements in these wells on a biweekly basis. So every 2 weeks, they're out there collecting measurements, recording those in their database, and that information is available online and then readily available through the county's hydrogeologist. He's shared that information with us in recent days. If you look at this map, so here's what Mount Airy down here. You can see there's a handful of wells in the general vicinity of Mount Airy. I'll zoom into those here on the next slide. I just wanted to note here that the Carroll County Water Resource Coordination Council, I guess, receives this information or discusses it. The county staff present the information, the observations and trends that they're seeing on a monthly basis to the Carroll County Water Resource Coordination Council. And Dick, I understand you attend those meetings on a regular basis, right? You've been doing that for quite some time.
Yes, I do. They don't report every month on this. What they do is report when there's an exception one way or the other about either flood conditions or droughts.
Right.
But we are alerted, and sometimes we are also in between meetings alerted by email.
Right, which is great. So clearly, you know, it's not just Mount Airy trying to figure this out. It's other folks looking into this and tracking this on a regular basis, which, as I've noticed, is an enormous resource that we can use. All right, so here I've zoomed into Mount Airy, highlighting the observation wells. So these are not Mount Airy's pumping wells. Those are actually on the next slide just for reference. But these are the network of wells in the county's observation network. So for reference, this is downtown. Watkins Park is right here. There is a monitoring well in Watkins Park. I believe there's also a pumping well there, so that's convenient.
Yes. Yes.
There are, you know, most of the wells you can see are kind of east of town. The ones that I've starred are the ones that Mr. Neal recommended that he thinks would probably be most useful if we wanted to use water levels in these wells to help us with our decisions on potentially imposing water use restrictions. These things have these wells have long records. In some cases, the county's been collecting water levels for 20 years or so. So there's a long established record that we can use to figure out kind of what trigger levels might be for when the town might want to consider imposing restrictions. So yeah, here's one in Watkins Park. That one I think is probably a no-brainer. It's right there in the middle of town, essentially. There's one over here, the Gillis Falls well. And then also there's two wells here in this Watersville Road area, Shady Side wells. You know, one of those would probably be or could be selected for monitoring as well. When I say monitoring, it would just be, you know, we'd probably look at these wells, do a little statistical evaluation and figure out what water levels would make sense for triggering, say, voluntary restrictions, and then what other low water levels might trigger, you know, or lead to potential implementation of mandatory restrictions. So I stuck this map in here. This shows where the pumping wells are. Ideally, I'd put these wells and the observation wells on the same figure. Didn't have time for that, but I might cycle back and forth between these. So let's see, for reference, I guess this is downtown right through here. That Watkins well, make sure I'm looking at. So I think this is Watkins Park right here, right? So so there's one pumping well in Watkins Park, one observation well nearby as well. The other observation wells that we were looking at were mostly over here to the east. So they're not right smack dab in the middle of our pumping well network, but they are apparently good wells for monitoring water levels. And as Carroll County pointed out, they seem to have effectively sort of tracked low water levels with some of the past droughts that we've faced. All right, so in this system here, when you click on the wells on the Carroll County website, it actually brings up these hydrographs, which are pretty handy. So this is plotting water elevation in the well. So this is actually the Watkins Park well. So they're out there collecting biweekly water level measurements. They're putting them in their database, and that's what's shown here in blue. So you can see kind of the seasonal variation in water levels, kind of been up and down a little bit, usually lower typically and kind of later in the year, October, early fall, and then it comes back up. So sort of the trend that you see. You can see the low points. So this is 2002, which is one of our more significant drought situations on record, and a couple other fairly low points as well. And then some high points as well. You can see the water table back in late 2018 when we had significant amounts of rain. So speaking of rain, that's what these red bars are down here below. This is the precipitation on a monthly basis. So so it gives you sort of a good idea of how water levels are in our wells are tracking with precipitation. So
Before you get off that, and make a point to everybody. That blue line that you see goes all the way across, and that is the trend line over 20 years. And you'll notice that with its ups and downs and everything, that trend is fairly flat. In other words, overall, basically the water table hasn't changed over that 20 years. If you got some time on your hands, those wells that throughout the county that John was pointing out, you take a look at that, and you will see that some of those wells actually have a trend line that goes down, meaning overall in the long term, that water table is slowly and maybe permanently going down. So one of the real advantages of Mount Airy is the, I guess, aquifers that we're on, and Mark can comment on this, but we are fairly lucky that even though those lines go up and down, the trend over the years has been that we've been pretty stable in the water table throughout Mount Airy.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. That's great.
Yep.
So this next graph is actually something that Zachary Neal provided to us. It's essentially the same data. So the blue lines are the Watkins Park well that we were just looking at. The orange dots and lines are one of the Watersville Road wells. So just jumping back and forth. So it's the Watkins Park well here in blue, and then one of these Shady Side wells, Watersville Road wells, is also on this figure. So it's the same data, different scale, so it's all condensed, so the peaks are a little bit more evident. But what he's posted here down below is the time series data from the U.S. Drought Monitor, which is a statewide, but again, it really sort of highlights where we have drought conditions tied to low water levels here, right? Drought conditions triggered by less precipitation, of course. So we saw that on the prior slide, and then you can see these the drought indication colors here, going from white, which would be normal, so these areas no issues, through the yellows and the beiges, which are here, kind of moderate drought conditions, to the extreme, dark red for extreme drought conditions. So this is the sort of information that the county can help us pull and look at, and then we can use this to really figure out sort of what trigger levels might make sense. So I'm not going to throw out numbers, but here, over here, the water levels and feet above mean sea level for the Watkins Park well, whatever the average is, it's up in here. You could pick a water elevation in that well. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's 719, feet above mean sea level, something like that. That's sort of an initial trigger which grabs our attention, and maybe leads to voluntary restrictions being recommended. And then perhaps a lower one, maybe it's somewhere down here, whatever that number is, 718, 716, well, 716 is really low, but something that would factor into a decision for mandatory restrictions. And this analysis can be done on each of the wells in our network, because we do have this long period of data on record. So I just wanted to share that information with you. I found it pretty interesting looking through the resources and everything that we have out there at our fingertips to use. I'm going to scroll through this fairly quickly. This is the draft text essentially that's been pulling together for the draft or the drought management plan with the water use restrictions. So a little lead in, this is going to follow pretty closely with the state's program, which other towns are using. I've mentioned Westminster before. They have a pretty clear plan that also follows very closely after this state drought monitoring and response plan here that I've referenced. So we would define droughts, discuss the indicators. Again, these are very common indicators. Precipitation levels, obviously very relevant to our situation here in Mount Airy, as are groundwater levels. Stream flows can come into play. We're limited by what gauging stations are in our area. There really aren't many. There's a couple further east of Mount Airy that we could reference, but not particularly important to our local analysis. Same thing, of course, with reservoir stage. Now, all of these indicators do factor into the state system here, right? So the state is already looking at all of those from more of a regional perspective. So, I feel like they're still being covered or considered, though not necessarily. We obviously don't have any reservoirs here in Mount Airy, for instance. Alrighty. So for assessing drought, what I envision here is actually defining the resources that we have at our fingertips. Some of the ones that I just went through, the Maryland Drought Monitoring System, the Carroll County Well Observation Network that DLRM maintains. And then depending on what resources we have available here in the town, input from our water supply staff as well. It's likely that we're keeping records on our pumping wells. Westminster, for instance, does. They track the water levels in their pumps, of course, so their pumping wells, and have actually set criteria for individual wells, so that if water levels drop to a certain point, that can be factored into their decisions to impose restrictions. So the way I had this laid out right now is basically a fairly simple three-stage system, going from green, which would be normal, yellow, which would be looking at voluntary restrictions, and then red, which would be mandatory restrictions. So the way it plays out, green is again normal. There's really nothing pointing towards concern, no drought conditions on the horizon really. Yellow, though, would be sort of the first stage, where we're looking at some conditions that are pointing towards a change, and we've actually, what I would like to see this do is to actually call out what those criteria would be. So the way this reads right now would be stage 2 would be recommended to the mayor and town council when any of the 3 following conditions are met. So this is where we need a little bit of work, but examples would include the monthly rainfall indicator for the central region, and the state's drought monitoring program is given a rating of warning. So that would be this, right? So here's an example from March 2017. There was a warning rating there for rainfall, right? They're tracking rainfall throughout the entire central region in which Mount Airy sits, and this is even leading to an overall status of warning level as well at that point. So that would be one, that would be a red flag, right? That would be something for us to be aware of and to consider and say, all right, check. Clearly, that we're heading in the wrong direction here in the central region. What else can we look at? Well, there'd also be rainfall. That's key, right? That's a primary factor in drought conditions. I feel like, Dick, this map here that's provided on a regular basis becomes a really useful resource for us, right? This or something like it is something that we could use to help us assess where rainfall is relative to mean rainfall. So this shows, or basically this shows a departure from the average, right? So it's comparing what rainfall is during the previous 30-day period, how that compares to what the average is for that period, and it's color coded. So if so these purples here, they're actually getting more rainfall than average, greater than
What do you,
75% above.
John, what are you looking at? Because I still have the MDE drought status current condition screen.
Okay.
Something different?
I am, yes. So let me ask you a question. That might be because I just shared one. Did you see, are you able to see this, the Word document that I'm sharing?
No.
No, you're not? Okay, let me just stop sharing, and then I'll reshare my whole desktop. Sorry about that.
Thinking about rainfall, that's what's happening. I hear thunder and I hear rain.
Yeah, I do too. Out here, it's really pouring.
Yeah.
All right.
And I'm getting a weather warning. Oh, great. All right.
I'll try to hurry through this.
Yeah.
So can you see this now?
Yes.
Okay. So so yeah, so this map, and Dick, this is something you circulate. Where are you getting this from?
I can send you the link. It's off the top of my head, I don't know who produces it.
Right.
I can send you the link.
Okay. But so this is pretty valuable because it's showing us essentially how, rainfall in the previous 30 days, how that compares to the average. And, greens, blues, purples are fine, right? We're at or above the average. But when we get into the yellows, oranges, and reds, we're actually, our rainfall is below the average. And that's what we need to be careful about. And so, using information like that to track precipitation will be key. Can you see this Word document right here that I'm sharing now?
Yes.
Okay. So I may have been talking to this a few minutes ago, but if you weren't able to see that, that wasn't very helpful. But for the yellow stage, this is what I was reading from. Essentially 6 criteria that we would consider establishing that we would use to determine when we move from one stage to the next. So I've talked through 1, 2, and 3. The fourth would be using the data from Carroll County's DLRM observation well network to establish specific water levels for each of those observation wells that we think, with the county's input, would basically indicate reason for concern, right? So water levels in these observation wells drop to a certain level, whatever that might be, but somewhere down, somewhere down in here, right? That would trigger a level of concern and consideration to move to stage 2, which would be voluntary restrictions. So where we go with that would be establishing what those restrictions would be. I've taken a cut at that. Essentially it would be a voluntary restriction on the use of watering outdoors for most any purpose. Watering lawns, washing cars, pressure washing, or for recreational purposes. We'd also define some of the actions that the town would take, notifying county governments that were in this drought status. The town would want to continue to evaluate drought conditions and probably up their frequency, rather than looking at things on a monthly basis at commission meetings and town council meetings and whatnot. Perhaps a bi-weekly basis would be recommended. Town would also use social media and other outlets to increase public awareness and encourage conservation. So we would work through that to finalize this thing. Then we established criteria, similar criteria, but different values that would trigger a recommendation to the mayor and the town council for mandatory restrictions. So these are very similar to the ones we looked at above, but essentially indicative of a decreasing or declining situation out there, and increasing chance of serious drought. So I've tied it back to that state system. If they are recommending, if either rainfall or overall status is falling into this emergency situation, that certainly would be something that we would want to factor into our recommendations to the mayor. Similarly, for rainfall, if that departure from average is significant, greater than 75% from the 30-day average, that's a key indicator for sure. And then we could establish specific water levels in the monitoring well network also. And so the way this reads is it essentially would be, perhaps 3 of these criteria. So 3 of the 6 are triggered. The town would really want to consider implementing restrictions. Right now, as you think back to what the code says, there's nothing there. It basically leaves it up to whoever's the mayor, the town council, whatever their thoughts are. This provides a little bit more certainty. Hopefully, would ensure proper thought and appropriate decision making before restrictions are imposed. And then as far as the restrictions, for stage 3, as it reads right now, it essentially would be banning all use of water outdoors for any reason, right? I mean, if we're in that condition, there's no need to be watering lawns on even or odd days like our current system lays out. I think we would recommend banning use of water for watering, for washing cars or other surfaces, for recreational purposes, etc. So, in my mind, that's simple and straightforward, easier to implement. And we would also define the criteria for when these would go away, which essentially would be, fairly easy to track because we would have the data and the resources to be looking at. This last little comment here, this needs some work, but Dick, you and I have talked about this, but there certainly are potential, or is the potential for other circumstances, perhaps other emergency reasons that would trigger the need to put water restrictions on the town. Could be natural and man-made disasters, equipment failure, well contamination, maybe major modifications or equipment upgrades that have limited the water supply. So town would obviously need to maintain the authority to impose restrictions in those kinds of circumstances. So that's where we are. My plan is to continue to tweak this little document here. Do want to talk to some town folks about the pumping wells, and then I'd like to circulate this to you, Dick, and everyone else on the commission before our next meeting. Any questions on that?
Outstanding job, I can tell you that. You've done an outstanding job on that. That will lead to some clear guidance on what to do.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, I think we're going in the right direction here, most definitely. Yeah, I think we have to kind of talk about a little bit when you take some of these things like the state monitoring and even to some extent the county monitoring, which covers a greater area, then you have to be a little careful about using those that would recommend actually triggering. Maybe the language has to be that these should be the types of things that are monitored.
Right.
To the extent that they begin to show, for example, from green to red in the state thing, that when we consider recommending, voluntary or mandatory, and that, so we got to kind of think about how we want to do it, because we don't want this to be where it's a dogmatic, locked in. It's automatic. You're going to do it without consideration of, other factors.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think we're on the right track. Definitely on the right track. This is good.
Yeah, I think the way it would work is, it's probably this commission that would be tracking this more closely than anyone else.
Yes.
And then from there, it basically becomes it provides criteria for us to keep an eye on, and then for us to make recommendations up the chain to the town council and the mayor. But yeah, you're right. Nothing should be set in stone. Obviously, it's ultimately up to the mayor to make the decision. But this, I think, provides a much clearer tracking process. For consistency. I think consistency is a lot of it moving forward. So that.
Well, I think a lot of the things that, I have in the past, and once in a while take a look at, just see how they're going. The nice thing about this is it kind of codifies in this memo what those things are, so that anybody coming along could take a look and kind of get a feel for it, rather than saying, well, how'd you come to that conclusion? Where's all your data, blah, blah, blah. I think actually enumerating is a good idea.
You kind of broke up on me there, Dick. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
my
I
end or
think,
yours.
Hey,
I think,
can you share these? Um, I just say, can you share that with the members?
Yeah, which part? The slides in the write-up?
Sure, yeah,
Yeah,
just the members, because, that's just a draft. It's
right.
not
Yeah, I'll stamp it all draft and I'll email it out.
outstanding. That'd be great, yeah.
good.
Good work. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? My only suggestion would be when John gets that out to us is that, take a look at it and see what it tells you and any comments we might want to make for October meeting. And, see what's
Dick,
starting.
I have a couple comments.
Sure, go ahead.
Number one, I thought John did a great job, got off to a great start. Second, I would give priority to Mount Airy well levels over input from the state or federal government in determining the triggers. The third comment that I have would be, how will you enforce this? That's been problematic for Mount Airy
Right.
in the past.
Yeah, that's a good point. We know the code, I think, establishes the ability for the town to fine, I think, up to $100, maybe $50 or $100. Back when that was written, there was no police force in Mount Airy. So the Westminster plan actually specifically discusses or notes that it would be, up to the police to, or they would have the ability to enforce it. So, you're right. That's always the problem. How does it get enforced? It's not an easy thing to do, but that's a thought, right? We actually do have officers here in town, and
Yeah.
that's a natural.
Well, we also have code enforcer who is attached to the police department, and it would be, I presume, that his primary responsibility. Surprisingly enough, and you go back to what created this was some drought conditions in which I think the mayor put in a voluntary, or maybe it was restrictive, water use without any criteria that, for example, the 27 memo or this, but it was surprising that people called town hall and said, what my neighbor's doing? What the guy down the block, he's watering his lawn and blah, 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 so I suspect it would be enough to keep that code enforcer busy if he wanted to get out and that, enforce it. And the rule of thumb quite often is if you get a couple of people, the majority suddenly will fall in line, and suddenly compliance really goes up. So,
Right.
But I think between the police department and the code enforcer, we could probably have enough oversight.
Yeah.
But I agree with Ron's concern.
Yeah, the Westminster plan says city police and code enforcement personnel will enforce water use violators.
Right. By the way, I did tell you at some point, John, that I think it might have been a phone conversation, that Westminster primarily got its water from wells augmented by surface water. I asked Westminster, I had it reversed. 60% or plus of their water comes from surface water, and only about 40% comes from wells. So their indications of drought and everything are kind of based on that ratio.
Right.
I think their plan is actually fundamentally a good plan.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they have 6 or so criteria as well for their various stages. Similar language that I was piecing together. If 3 of these criteria are met, then they move from stage 1 to stage 2, etc. And yeah, and some of those apply to reservoir levels, right? Because they
Mhm.
So yeah, they tie it to their pumping wells, reservoir, rainfall. So fairly similar to what we were looking at as well. But again, reservoirs, surface water, not applicable to what we're doing.
Yeah, I just point out as background for Westminster that they also have had water shortages that have affected over the years their ability to build. They are part of a pilot program with grants, I think, from federal government, to study the use of the outflow from wastewater treatment plant to put back in their system. Uh, and so that's how far they're going and trying to experiment with ways to improve their water situation. And once again, some of it's driven by the NDE permit amounts that the way they're allocated.
Mm-hmm.
But we certainly don't have that situation in Mount Airy. We do have a question that we're limited by our permits. And many people, including myself, believe that that's the real limitation, the aquifer and the strength of the aquifer. So, Mark, are you agreeing with that?
I'm agreeing with it.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, and then I like Ron's other comment though about maybe not relying on the MDE statewide program. So yeah, we can, we'll think about that more. We'll see what we have with regard to our pumping wells, and maybe it's just tied to our pumping wells and our local observation wells, and just go with that. And everything else is just a resource, point of reference as needed. So I'll circulate what it says now, and you guys can read through it. Let me know if you have any other thoughts or questions, and we'll keep working through it.
Yeah, food for thought, but I think you've done an excellent job to really get us going here so that, we have something to work with and come out with what I think is, in the end, going to be a great improvement over the 2007 tier system. And I don't say that with any reluctance, even though I'm the one that wrote most of it. You far surpassed what we did in 2007. So thank you.
All right. You should have told me that before I criticized it for so long. So.
Oh, no, I'm thick-skinned. I'm all right. Anything else on that? All right. Thank you very much.
Good job.
All right, moving down to new business. I have expanded polystyrene ban, and this is from state law, but the only reason, and this is really not a water and sewer issue so much, but at the WRCC meeting, this, and I'm going to hold it, I don't know, I guess you can't even see the word. Oh, there you go. This is a flyer, and they asked that this be put on town websites. And so they're going to send this out in a PDF fashion, and I just want to pass it on to everybody that I am going to turn that over to the town and then ask them to post it on whatever they think the appropriate portion of the town website is. I really don't think it's a water and sewer thing, but just FYI for you. The last thing we have on the agenda, this is pretty good news. And I sent out today, said the Carroll County and Mount Airy permit stormwater management remediation accomplishments. And starts with Carroll County. It shows that in Carroll County that we were supposed to remediate over a 5-year period that ended December 31st, 2019, 1,614 acres throughout the county. If you jump up, you'll see acres accepted by MDE in the report, which is 1,628.7 acres. So that's pretty close. Carroll County reported and asked for credit for 2,034 acres. That request was based on all of the work completed, plus all of the work on stormwater management still being completed and in process. MDE elected to accept the work that was completed. That difference of 405 acres upon some additional information from the county, should be credited toward our next countywide municipal stormwater management permit, which has not been issued yet. That would mean that if you take the 14 acres, the 5 acres on this chart, you get up to 420 acres. And that says that we already, if they request the same amount of remediation in the next permit that they have in the last permit, we're already 25% done with the job. The projects that are currently in process. There is some talk with the new permit of going from 20% remediation requirement of your impervious surface to 10. That would be a significant increase in how much credit we would get towards meeting our goal. Bottom line, Carroll County is in good shape. It was pointed out that Carroll County at the WRCC meeting is the only county in this state to have accomplished and exceeded the permit requirements. The only county. So we are way ahead of the game. There was a letter issued, and I don't have an electronic copy of this, unfortunately, from MDE dated August 6, 2020. And attached to it is the comments they make about the December filing of our annual stormwater management status. They're very, very pleased. I mean, this is a very complimentary letter coming from MDE, which in my history is an unusual event. So we're in good shape for that. That is one of the key reasons why, when 5 years ago, when municipalities signed up with Carroll County to join together to meet the permit requirements for stormwater management, we did it seeing that we could actually pick major projects throughout most of the municipalities because of the concentration of population and therefore the amount of impervious surface to be able to achieve the goals and probably exceed them, and we have. So that is really good news. We are way ahead of the curve in the state of Maryland. We also have the Frederick County side, which is under a phase 2 permit. That phase 2 permit, because of a lot of administrative issues, did not get issued to around 2018. That permit ends in 2023. So we've got a couple more years on that. That permit is basically saying that if we do the East-West Pond and the Twin Ridge projects, one of which is started, the other which will be East-West started probably in the beginning of the year, that of the 26 acres of impervious surface that we were required to remediate during the permit that ended in December 19, of the 26 acres, that project will yield us 66 acres. In other words, that this schedule I showed you says we went 40 acres over by just doing those projects that no matter what, 10%, 20% requirement for remediation in the next permit, which starts in 2024 and will take us to 2028, we're ahead of the curve. We've done the job. So if we get full credit for that, we actually would not be required to do any stormwater management remediation under the new permit to meet the permit requirements until the permit comes out for the next phase in 2029. Wow. So that's where we stand. That's really an accomplishment. This I think the total money out of the pocket of Mount Airy to do all of that work, it's approximately $500,000 and change for the East-West. I don't have a number for the Twin Ridge, but it's a couple $100,000 there. So, you know, it's not that we're getting away scot-free, but if we can go another 5-year permit cycle and already have met our goals, we're in pretty good shape. That means we will not be putting that significant investment in the Frederick County side next permit period that we have in the first. So we've just got to get MDE to acknowledge that extra 40 acres and as applicable to the next permit, which has been the case in the past. So that's the good news. We are in good shape with all of this stuff that has been being worked on. And I really have to congratulate Carroll County for managing this program, both the Carroll side and stepping up to the plate and helping us with the Frederick County side. They have been marvelous to work with. And I think the results both at the county and the town level really show what can happen when you've got people at the county and 8 municipalities that get together, commit themselves to say, we're going to get this done, and we're going to get it done as efficiently as possible, and then to come up with the kind of numbers that we have after that 5-year period. So big shout out to all the municipalities in Carroll County. But I wanted to pass that on to everybody. I was just going to make a short statement at the town council meeting, let them know that the shape that we're in and how that affects the future, and the fact that we might have put out a lot of money in people's minds to do stormwater management remediation, but we've certainly taken care of our responsibilities for now and well into the future. So that's it. Does you have any comments or questions about that?
No,
Good news.
looks very nice.
Yeah, it is. Good work for all those people in the county.
Yeah, they've always been on.
Yeah, the town's cooperation with that. By the way, Zachary Neal's one of the people that been an integral part of, being involved with the parts of this whole stormwater management project. I don't have anything else. If anybody else has anything?
I
I don't.
All right. Did I get a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
All right, Ron, how about a second?
I'll second.
You and I, John, are in favor of that?
I'm in favor, yes.
All right. All right, so good meeting. Thank you very much, John. And, we look forward to kind of taking that base that you've done and really
Yeah.
coming up with something. So
Work it over.
thank you and good night, everybody.
Good night.
night.
See you later.
All right.